Welcome to Spiritual Studies Session 52. This session focuses on various moon deification in the ancient world. Now, we've discussed moon deities in our focus topics several times throughout the course, but today we are focusing on the ancient aspects ascribed to the moon and why these ancient or modern deities have certain associations. This will not cover all associations, but we will familiarize ourselves um, with traditional understandings across the world. There, as a final bit of context, we are putting a strange predominance on male, moon gods as opposed to moon goddesses. For those that are in the know, across the board, moon goddesses, the moon is mostly ascribed towards the feminine, of which we will also discuss. We begin with a general concept of the Native Americans, which is the story or stories of Grandmother Moon. For those that are unfamiliar, you have Grandmother Moon, Grandfather Sun, Mother Earth, and Father Sky. And in one of these stories, as a general thread, it has everything to do with women and the power of women. The power of women is to be able to feel for their loved ones, for their family, to take in both the sorrow and the happiness of all that they are connected to. And in this way, the power of the woman is to be the very life force of the family. This is a traditional understanding. Now, in a story, this, and in reality as well, this can become heavy. All of these emotions, all of this heartache, all of this overabundance of feeling that the Creator gave women this gift as also their potential burden. So one day a woman goes out and yells out about her burdens, how it's too much. She's cracking. And Raven hears her and asks why she's crying, and the woman explains. And the Raven understands, and he goes to Grandmother Ocean to ask her for help. And Grandmother Ocean offers all women the ability or the gift of washing away their pain. However, she realized her limits, that not all women lived near to the ocean. So Grandmother Ocean asked Grandmother Moon for her help. And so Grandmother Moon would use her power to reach them, to give them this purification when they needed it, to help relieve them when they needed it. And so right away, you can already see some themes that we're gonna dig through here. Once every moon cycle, Grandmother Ocean, Grandmother Moon will send a time to purify the woman. So you can already see the tendency here, but also this tying between the effeminate nature and all three, women, moon, and the ocean. When an eclipse happens, the natives would look at this as a time where grandfather sun and grandmother moon embrace Mother Earth, that the parents embrace the child. And this is a beautiful occasion, the reuniting of the earth with her parents. And for just a few moments, how special this is, a perfect moment of love. And so this would be thought to radiate to all beings that live on the earth mother. So right away, I want to put a cultural lens to that. How amazing is that? As a simple interpretation or belief, what have you. How much better that is than I don't even know what we are supposed to think about an eclipse nowadays. So in this way, the moon is tied to the ocean and is tied to women, tied to the emotions, tied to reproductive cycles, that many women were known to give birth during the full moon, or in some way their menstruation were tied to a particular time of the moon. And there's many reasons for this. One of the most notable and perhaps the most mundane is that the ancient world, and still yet modern tribes that have managed to, lessen the impact, maybe some places in Siberia, lessen the impact of the modern world mentality, still, and did always follow time by nothing other than the moon. But to get on point, the number of celebrations, the number of ceremonies during the full moon is an ancestral tie. It goes back, beyond history. Full moon ceremony. And this would be to sing songs to Grandmother Moon. And we still find this lead in the very phrase honeymoon. While we're on our honeymoon. And so when children are born, they would be held up to the moon to be introduced, and as a move of respect, because again, the moon is associated with reproduction, fertility. Now, why? Well, this association with its effect on the waters, noted by coastal natives, noted by sailors throughout many, many centuries, millennia, and a woman. What are we born in? What are we incubated in? We are incubated in amniotic fluid, the water. And for those who are scuba divers, that to be within the water is a very different mentality, a trance state even. The subsumation, to be subsumed by the water, does something to you, does something. So Grandmother Moon watches over the earth, regulates the tides, assists with all manner of life that spawns. Take a look at the many creatures that live in the ocean. Okay, when do they do their mating rituals? Oh, something about the moon. Maybe we wouldn't be the first to notice that. And so in this ancient way, and with this relation to the woman, the menstrual cycle is referred to as the moon time, where the waters bring new life, where A woman cleanses herself mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. This is a powerful time. And women would be allowed to, well, not allowed. That's not the right way to put it. Women would not have to do chores. Women would be able to not participate in the world. Imagine not having to go to work because you're on your moon time. That culturally speaking, you are dismissed during this time to reflect, to intuit, to this is viewed as the most powerfully intuitive time for the woman. So you should use it to discern and to reminisce and to recapitulate. Um, and of course, in these ceremonies of women, from being an infant all the way to being elderly, women would sit in a circle. They would bring water and they would pour all their water together. And this would sit under the full moon, or sometimes these ceremonies would happen 2 days after or 2 days before. It just depends on the culture, the custom. And throughout your whole life, you'd perform this. And this water would become a medicine. This moon water would become a medicine. And in the same way as it does for the moon water, it does for you. So right away, I want you just to take a note of how all that felt, right? How all of that felt for me to say in talking about this conception of the moon, the idea, the characterization, the aspects, how it felt. Now, we are going to contrast that across the world because that is a great sampling of what the original conception was like. So let's hop over to ancient Egypt. Straight away, the eclipse was viewed as something to be feared. It was a bad omen and was described as the sky swallowing the moon. So, again, quite the flip. This is not reunification and love, this is fear. However, on the other side, the moon is viewed as a symbol, or was, as a symbol of rejuvenation. Wonder why. It is called the one that repeats its form. And often, the moon deity would be depicted as a youth, or these different lunar gods, depending on where we're pointing, as young, as a child. That a story of an old man who once again becomes a child. Now, here is another element to the moon. Its allegorical nature to pointing to reincarnation or uh, eternal life. It vanishes and it comes back over and over and over. So the old man, the waning crescent, vanish. Then the waxing crescent, the child. A pharaoh was described as young as the moon, as a cultural idiom, that the moon is always being reborn, being reinvigorated, rejuvenated. And something that has been a trope throughout the course in talking about Egypt is the horns and the bull allegories. Well, the lunar god, the crescent shape of the moon is described as the sharp horns. Yet again, tying it to the cow or to the ox more accurately, the rutting bull. So when it's waxing, it's called the rutting bull, the youthful bull, the one that's trying to mate, right? And then when it's waning, it's called the ox, the old bull, the one that's pulling. And so yet again, these ties to fertility. And also a tie to something I haven't mentioned yet, but agriculture, plants, the growing of plants. So it's not just the life in the ocean, but there's always been this association with the growth of plants that during the full moon, it was viewed to be the best time to sow your seeds, to throw them out, to begin the growth. This would be the time. And ancient Egyptians also believed that minerals would spawn in the desert under the full moon. So let's hop over to China. And this is Chang'e, or I don't know if I'm saying that right, but she is the moon goddess or the moon god, well, deity, once mortal, wife of the Lord Archer. There's a few versions of the story, but there were 10 blackbird suns in the sky. So it's to say, the story is saying that there were once 10 suns in the sky, and that the gods asked the archer to shoot them down, and he shot down everyone except for one, and that was our sun, the one that got left. And this archer was set to become a king in one version of the story, and was corrupted by power and got a hold of this elixir that would grant godhood. And Chang'e wished to stop this and quickly took the drink herself and was turned into the moon as a way of preventing a tyrant. In another version, the archer isn't so bad, and it's actually his apprentice who wants to steal it, because the archer refuses to drink it because then he knew that he would have to leave Chang'e. So she catches the apprentice trying to steal this elixir, and yet again she quickly moves to drink it herself as a sacrifice to prevent an evil deity. So Chang'e is a reverential and respected figure. She is noble, selfless, and is the center of the Moon Festival in the mid-autumn, one of the most celebrated holidays in China. And with this story and Chang'e looking up at his wife being the moon and her looking down on him, he would put out sweet cakes for her. And this is part of the festival. And this is where we get moon cakes, which I think are now like a modern treat. Maybe it's like a hostess thing. So this is a lighter feel, right? This is a lighter feel when it comes to the Chinese story here. But we have this sense again of reverence, of positiveness. So let's jump over to Japan in Shintoism. And so this is Tsukuyomi. Tsukuyomi would be one of the first deities created by the creator, accidentally birthing three. One of them was the sun goddess from his left eye, or there, I'm not sure if it's a his, it's Sagagi's. The moon god, Tetsugomi, Tutsukuyomi, was born of the right eye, And the last was born from the nose, and that's the sea and storm god. And here we have a case of the male of the moon god, one of the few. Although in this talk again, I might make it seem like they're all male because we're going to talk about them. One of them is the Hindu Chandra, which is coming up next. The Norse god Mani, who I've mentioned a few times in the course, and the Egyptian god Khonsu, of which I didn't mention directly, but anyhow. So Tuskyomi is this rare case of a predominant moon god in the pantheon, because usually when you're studying these things, moon gods or goddesses can take a background role, are more subsidiary, especially true of the Greek Luna, Artemis, and Hecate. And the name here, Tuskuyomi, I think I'm finally getting it down, literally means moon reading or moon watching. And this is a nod back to the aristocratic courts that would do something called moon watching, moon reading, where they would get together at the full moon and would read poetry while gazing at it, which I think sounds like a great time. However, in these particular events, proper etiquette was something so serious that breaking a taboo could result in death. And so subsequently, this moon god is known for a stark, serious etiquette. And one of the reasons the reason the moon's moving across the sky is because his wife, the sun, divorced him, moved away from him because he killed somebody for breaking etiquette. And so he is chasing her across the sky, and only every once in a while during an eclipse, they catch up with each other. However, where this would make him seem negative, it's morally ambiguous. He is still revered. He is described as beautiful, like all moon goddesses are, and is also described as cold and strict. So let's hop over. I mentioned Chandra, and this is Hinduism. Chandra straight away is highly associative with the Soma, which I have discussed in the course before. The Soma is a very complex topic. Mundanely speaking, the Soma is the dew of the morning, is the juice of the plants, that which they secrete. So the life force per se. But on the other level, and I think I spent time in the mystic terminology class talking about this, but on the inner level, it is the very consciousness itself, or has been tied to sacred medicines, Anamita muscaria, what have you. There are many different interpretations for what the Soma is on the inner level, the sacred nectar of the gods. This could be also a nod to DMT, which I think is the interpretation I used in that talk. But Chandra means shining, and was originally, and here's a very stark point, was originally a feminine deity. However, in time, with the rise of patriarchy, then Chandra becomes a moon god. So, we might be able to apply that across in some ways. Of course, described as beautiful, young, and in one hand holds a club, and in another hand holds a lotus, rides a chariot across the sky pulled by 10 horses. Connected with dew, the Vita, connected with fertility, ooh, which is a nod back again to the original mother goddess, the pre-religion religion. The Lord Shiva above the head has a crescent moon. Interesting. What's that about? Maybe like a crown. Representation of Chandra and Shiva's having of the divine nectar, the soma. So let's stop a little bit. The mystique, the ethereal nature of a full moon night, that otherworldliness. Maybe this has something to do with the soma, because in Vedic astrology, you see that Chandra, or the moon, represents all sorts of interesting things: higher perception, sensitivity, imagination, the subconscious, the intuition, all manner of emotions. So all of this is very woo, like the woman, huh? And in the pre-Vedic religion, before even Jainism, there has been a long tradition of worshiping the moon or under the moon, as all ancient society. So, of course, on the other level, what does Chandra represent? Well, it's the water. The flow that binds and separates all existence. Now, that's an interesting nod. So, all things are unified in the ocean. However, above land, things are separated by the water. And so, it's an interesting contrast there and an interesting realization to be had. So, if one wanted the favor of these attributes, then one would fast on a Monday, on a moon's day. There have been practices of total silence among the full moon, and that this is a full intaking of the power and the strength that is provided from the moon during this time. It is also said that the moon holds its most beneficent power for those of the ages 24 and 25, which is interesting. It's an interesting thought that the moon influences the infant, that it influences its left nostril, its brain, the breasts, the eyesight. I mean, this is heavy astrology right here, that the moon influences certain professions: nurses, caterers, prostitutes, cooks, fishermen, travelers. Now, just to bring this into the world a little bit, if you work in hospitality, especially as a server, as a bartender, you know this is true if you pay attention. If you look at the crowd on a full moon versus any other day, you'll know the difference. This is not woo-woo stuff. This is not fakery. If you go talk to someone who's been in the industry long enough, who's actually paid attention, this is understood. The moon does stuff. Likewise, well, not likewise, associated with fertility, growth, all manner of liquids, milks, grains, impregnation, and conception, associated with attractive appearances, jewelry, sensuality, poetry, illumination, the intuition, youth, and all manner of taste and arts and music. All soft stuff, the humanities, huh? And again, that nod to poetry, interesting, right? Brings us back to the old moon watching of China. And so again, in those feminine aspects, because that all comes across as the feminine woo aspects, and for it to be turned into a man, right? Just something to note there. But you still get that taste of like what it was back with that same sampling taste in the beginning of, say, grandmother moon. So in looking through the Canaanites, I was trying to dig and dig, and I found the name, right? It's Yerik, and it's the god of the moon. And we all know where the Canaanites are getting their stuff from, right? So, but to not jump ahead too quick, it's called Lord of the Sickle, and that seems hearkening. But again, the moon has had this association with agriculture, okay? And what is the sickle for? Oh, it's for harvesting the grain. Yerik is also referred to as the provider of nightly dew. I wonder what that's what that's a nod to. And who's the wife of Yerik? Oh, the goddess of orchards and fruit. Like agriculture. So if we can't dig too far there, let's go back into the ancestors to see where this is coming from. Let's go to Sumeria, Mesopotamia, Babylonia, the original name Nana, but also the name Sin or Suen. This long trope, this long reverence of the moon here. The son of the sky god Enlil and the grain goddess Ninlil. But does Nana does that sound like a male name? I don't know. Anyhow, sacred city of Ur. The daughters of Mesopotamian kings would always become high priestesses to Nana or to Suin. This was to maintain power and ties to myth and deification, something we've mentioned before. Nana being associated with the breeding of cattle. Primordial cow goddesses, bovine deities. Sacred feminine vibes here. So the name changes throughout different, Nana in Sumer, Suen during Babylon and Assyria. However, there also could be indications that different names were used for different phases. For instance, if the moon is full and new, the name is Nana. However, if it's crescent, it's Suen. But anyhow, Suen's wife is the reed goddess Ningal, referred to as the Great Lady, Lady of the Reeds. That's a different tie-in to go into. In the symbols frequently seen with depictions of the bull and the tripod and the crescent moon. But Sin has a beard made of lapis lazuli, riding on a winged bull. Okay, so there's the bull vibe again. Take it on over to Egypt, right? Also is referred to as the Lord of the Crown or the Lord of the Diadem because the crown is the crescent. That is Nana's crown. So maybe crowns have a tie all the way back to a certain understanding of the crescent moon. Just an idea. But there's this aspect of wisdom here that is not wasted, right? So Suen is referred to as he whose deep heart no God can penetrate. That wisdom is dispensed from he who is the mysterious light of the night. I mean, if you think about it, it is quite mysterious, right? That this deity would bring wisdom not only to mankind, but to the other gods. Now, if you look over at Egypt again, then you know that Thoth, the god of wisdom, or Thoth, or whoever, whoever wishes to say it, however, um, was associated with the moon. So here we're finding another common thread in Suen or in Nana. And on these other artistic representations, Suen is seen as an old man with a flowing beard. The old moon, which is kind of weird contrast. But the interesting note here is this frequent tie to the number 30. So why 30? Well, roughly speaking, between each lunar cycle, there are 30 days. That a month, like a Monday, a month is based off of a moon cycle. 30, roughly speaking. Curious, huh? I think it's curious. And so, what would this turn into, right? This Suen would turn into Yarek of the Canaanites, would turn into Tot. And straight away you can see its ties, right? It would deviate. So the Canaanites weren't so interested in holding up the moon directly, but his daughter, the daughter of the moon, Ishtar, would become the more reverential Canaanite Astarte or Esther. And a curious note here, too, is that the earliest writer, it said that the earliest writer in the world in the 23rd century BCE was Enhunduana, a high priestess of Suen. And so these writings are found in relation to earliest writings in the world, allegedly, is in reference to Suen, in reference to Nana, in reference to written by a high priestess, the daughter of a king. So there's that interesting reference here, is to say that Abraham would have definitely been in contact with this as he was moving across, his descendants being the Israelites. And we all know what happened there through the Canaanite polytheism talk, right? Yahweh was the only God taken of the Canaanite polytheism, destroying all the other ones. Very interesting case. However, if you can look over at Numbers 10:10, the reference says, "At your times of rejoicing, your appointed feasts and new moon festivals, you are to sound the trumpets over the burnt offerings and fellowship offerings, and they will be a memorial for you before your God." So right away here, mm, 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 mm. on one hand, it's getting rid of everything, but obviously during these political moves that were happening, and I've said it before, the Bible, it was a political move, especially these chapters, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and Kings, definitely. Um, this is a case where, in all these other cases, burn the Asherah poles, right? Curse Moloch and Dagon, right? But then here it's like, man, but the moon's okay. Just call it the moon. We'll do these same things, but just as long as it's God, right? And another curious thing here, and this is potential heresy, right? But there have been scholars and Christian writers that have argued that the Muslim Allah originally ties back to Suen, the god of the moon, and this is indicated by the crescent being the symbol of Islam and subsequent flags of the Middle East. However, if you really look into this, there's a lot of stretches to be made to come to that conclusion, and this is just a theory or an interpretation. I'm not saying it one way or the other. So let's jump out of this Western world for a little bit. We'll be back in a second. We'll look at the Cook Islands in Polynesia, and it's Avatia, which means light or means noon. So it could be interpreted as a lunar deity, but it's said that his eyes are the sun and the moon, known as the god of light. So, where have we seen this? Also in Egypt, the eye of Ra, the moon and the sun are thought to be the eyes of Ra. That the circular shapes are eyes in the sky. This is a tie to the all-seeing eye, being the sun. Anyhow, in the Cook Island mythology, that the primordial mother created 6 children, 3 from her left side, 3 from her right side, and the first one was Avatia, or the first man, or that which would become the light god, or the moon god. The right half of him was a man, and the left half of him was a fish. Curious. So now we're getting some Pisces vibes here. Not just that, not just Pisces, but half man, half fish. So a tie to both the influence on man and the influence on the sea, on the ocean, which we've seen since the beginning here. There's a quote: "When the eye of Avatia is open, the sun is in its full glory." So you can think of the waxing and waning of the moon as a type of blinking of the god. So I wanted to take a little bit though and say where else have we seen a half man, half fish deity? And so then we had to go back to Canaanite polytheism and look at Dagon. And in the Bible, as I mentioned, Dagon is viewed by the Hebrews as the god of the Philistines, and not a cool thing at all. And it was thought to be worshipped as a fertility god. I wonder what else Dagon would be related to. Because there's been this long association with the word Dagon being like meaning fish or fish god. So, it's interesting because there's ties to fertility, agriculture, and fish god. So all these things are kind of it's all pointing to the moon in some way. And then another etymology points to Dagon meaning to be cloudy, or a weather god associated with the clouds, and or rain. Again, as agriculture, rain means life, right? Or another explanation, which would point to Dagon meaning something for grain. So I might be stretching here, but they all seem to be kind of pointing towards the moon in a certain way, but it seems, or maybe it was stripped of that, and now it's just all these aspects. I don't know. I just found that too curious to not bring up. So let's jump out of it again. Look over at the Inuits, and the name is Igaluk. It's the god of the moon who was once a man. Now, this story gets kind of vulgar, and I'm not going through all the details, but there's a day where he and his sister were at a dance in the village, and all the lights went out. And he was trying to find a lady to get with. So he goes and finds a lady in the dark. But when the lights come back, he notices or finds out that this lady he's trying to get with is his sister. Skipping some really rash details. He's trying to chase her, I believe, apologetically, in guilt. And they both pick up a burning torch and run through the dark. And at some point, he falls, and his torch falls in the snow. So now all that's left is an ember. But he keeps chasing her, and they keep running, and they keep running. And eventually, the wind blows them up into the sky, and it turns her into the sun, where with her bright torch that's still shining, and brings him up into the sky, and with his dim torch becoming the moon. And so yet again we have this case of the moon is chasing the sun, this ancient idea of the moon chasing the sun, which brings this curious notion, right? If we're ancient people, no conceptions of the world, none, and you look up there and you see the motion that's happening, Would just about anybody call it a chase? I mean, especially if you're big into hunting, right? So there might not have to be a uniform story that they're all delineating from, but it's also very possible. So, of course, in the same case, when Igala catches up with his sister Melina, this is an eclipse. This is the meeting of the two. But as we know, it doesn't last that long, right? So let's jump back to the natives and look specifically at the Lakota and the greater Sioux. And it's Hanwi. And I know I'm not pronouncing that quite right. The evening light, wife of the sun, or the morning light. And is said that she hides herself with a cloak because her husband is known for his indiscretion. So she covers herself up sometimes, and other times she completely shows herself. This is the different phases of the moon. And she represents women, all women, young, old, middle-aged, all women. Maiden, mother, crone. Look at Artemis, look at Luna, look at Hecate, maiden, mother, crone. Look at the triple goddess in Slavic paganism. Look at the triple goddesses in Celts. All across the world, maiden, mother, crone. The moon, waxing, waning, waxing, full, waning. Maiden, mother, crone. Motherhood. Feminine power, the life of a woman. Hanwi, moon spirit. In Sioux means night sun. Literally the night sun, the son of night. Moon spirit, guardian of the people, guards the people in the night, protecting them from evil spirits. Beneficial, benevolent. Hanwi, wandering moon, because of her husband. In the Sioux tradition, the sun god Wi was sitting at a banquet with the gods and sat next to the wrong person. Showed his disloyalty, it would seem. And the sky god punished him, punished Wi. So he made Wi rule only during the day and Hanwi rule only during the night. This is separating them. And she is ashamed of what he did. So she hides her face from him as a sign of shame, of his betrayal, of his potential adultery. So another reason why the moon hides itself. And note that we've had stories like this too when we were talking about the Pleiades. Why the seventh sister disappears. There's stories for that. So again, just to reiterate, the blinding, piercing light that can come through the darkness, wisdom, that which can pierce through the dark is clearly powerful. And so when it's out, when the full moon is out, full blare, cleansing, relieving you, clearing negativity, you are safe as she watches. So you've seen, we've come full circle, right? So what do we do now? A full moon, not especially noted by anybody who does not follow any sort of new age or say old tradition, right? So what it was versus what it is, something as seemingly mundane as the moon landing, as a cold place without an atmosphere that apparently people have been to, right? And put a flag on, danced around on, blah, 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 right? It's just that, nothing more, no wonderment, no aspects, no ceremony, but it still exists. It's still in China, they still hold it up. In Hinduism, still hold it up. And all manner of native traditions still hold it up. And again, I want to point out, just like I did in the beginning, notice the contrast here. Notice the contrast. I mean, how great something like Grandmother Moon, Han Hui, right? or Chenji, right? All these things are great. They represent something. It's beautiful. It's wise. It protects you. You know, even if you declare that as fallacy, foolishness, it's better. It has a better effect on human existence. So on a different level, we see that there have been universal tropes across associations with water, associations with the ocean, with fertility. And so where are we getting this from, right? And it has to hearken all the way back to the ancient primordial mother goddess worship, which if you want to look into that, you know, that's its own session. But this is one of those great examples where you can look at one thing across traditions across the world, and you can see how there's a thread between them all. But I suppose I should stop at that.